Please welcome to the She Summit stage our next panel. Please meet UN Women Champions for Innovation and learn how to innovate and partner to achieve gender equality. Please welcome to the stage Sarah Michelle Gellar, actress, co-founder of Food Stirs, author of Stirring Up Fun with Food, and UN Champion for Innovation. Rachel Roy, founder and creator of Rachel Roy. Claudia Chan, CEO of She Summit and She Global, and moderator Wade Davis, former NFL player, cultural consultant, and inclusion advisor and feminist.
So hello everyone. Oh, come on, give us a little love back. Like I am on with 3 innovators, champions, she roles of mine, and like I'm the luckiest guy in the world right now. Yes, so first I just want to start by asking you all to tell the audience, what was the catalytic spark that got you inspired, involved in gender equality? And I'll start with you, Claudia.
You know, I think that for me it was growing up in New York City, but with a really strong mom. I have an older brother, and I saw her do, you know, cook, clean, you know, become the breadwinner of the family, and then all girls education, and then all girls high school, all women's college. But then after running a company for 10 years, from 25 to 35 years old, I wasn't really thinking about women's issues, and I was really so focused on, you know, coming from this Chinese immigrant family, like we need to survive, we need to make money, we need to, you know, I was so focused on this material definition of success, and then I was like, but I wasn't thinking about what it meant to be a girl and a woman. And I remember reading a book called Half the Sky at the time, Nicholas Kristof and Cheryl Woodan, in around 2009, 2010, and just like this, you know, documenting the state of women and girls. Like, forget about first world problems. It's like gender-based violence, maternal mortality, sex trafficking, and just women and girls that are not born in a privileged place, but just what are happening to women and girls in the world. And that was just sort of like, how is it possible that I grew up in a family and just in this education of surrounded by women and girls, and yet I wasn't doing anything for women's issues. So that was my catalyst, was really reading that book, which is so powerful about education, right? When you can, and then look what I've done. It's amazing when you unleash a seed in somebody and the potential of what somebody can do when they are inspired and have that catalyst.
Wonderful, wow. Rachel.
Hi everyone. So I actually had it really easy. My father took me to India, where he's from, when I was 3 years old, and so my very first memory, literally, that I have is a small girl begging for money from us. Her fingers were burned together, so they were like a little web. And having that image burned into my memory, it's never been anything that I don't think about. I have been informed from such an early age about inequality, about women's rights, simply from that visual. And it's interesting because I respond to visuals. I work in fashion. And so for me, it's just been something I grew up with. And I do worry about children that don't have families that instill that in them. And that's where we come in.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. Sarah?
I think for me it's funny. So I grew up in New York City as well with a single mother, and I think in a strange way, sometimes growing up in New York, you think you're exposed to so much, but you kind of live in a bubble, because and my friends and I, we didn't see difference because of gender, because of race, because of religion. We were extremely inclusive, and I remember like watching teen movies when I was younger, and they would like segregate the lunch tables, and I was like, well, that only happens in Hollywood movies. Like I was in such a New York City bubble of not knowing. And then, you know, I wound up on a show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it was the first, you might have heard of it, yes.
No one's ever seen it.
A few people have heard of
Women's
empowerment. And it was all about, thank you. And it was at a time when, you know, women were on roller skates on television shows. Like they didn't have a strong female heroine. So I think from that time on, I realized the importance and the voice that I had, and how I could shape that around the world and sort of exemplify what was put forth by that character. And then it just gets exemplified again when you have children. And not just that I have a daughter, but that I have a son. And I want my son to look at people, women, again, race, equality, all of that. I want us all to be equal, and I want to be able to teach that. So I think that was like the next movement for me in terms of being inspired to work harder.
Wonderful, thank you all. So as we think about what we're here to talk about is innovation and creativity, all of you are three powerful women who built almost institutions, right? I'm curious to what are some of the learnings that you had to learn along the way as you actually were building these industries that you can share with the audience that we need to know that other women may potentially face? I'll start with you, Shara.
Oh my goodness, I mean, it's difficult. You know, I think for me, initially coming from Hollywood, we're still fighting in Hollywood for, you know, equal pay, which seems ridiculous. You know, I had for 10 or 15 years, I held the record for the single highest female gross opening weekend, and yet I was still getting paid less than my male co-stars. But it goes so much deeper than that. And then moving into the business world was just shocking for me because they would look at my business partner and I, who's another female, and they would say, well, who's gonna run the company? And I thought, people still say this in America? Like, what? And you realize, you think about if we have this far to go in America, what is happening in these third world, underdeveloped countries where women aren't educated? You know, it all comes down to education. Once we can forward educated thinking across the world, then they can realize how powerful women are and what you can do. So I think it's sad that even in America, we still face as women what we should be past.
Yeah. Rachel, as you being a fashion icon, walk us through some of the challenges that you faced as you built this wonderful brand.
Oh, there's so many challenges. I mean, on the car ride over, there were challenges from not shipping on time, and do you make the decision to not work with that factory anymore, or do you try to get your buyers to accept the clothes, and then, you know, not to mention all employees. And one of the hardest parts of my job is the psychology that is needed as a president, as a CEO, and as a founder to continually make people happy and keep them inspired to even do their work. And so that aside, my give back component is quite challenging, and I really wish that it was not. And it was so challenging that I finally just worked it into my contract so that I never have to discuss it again. But yes, when I make product in any other venue other than factories, and there are some in America, but they're mostly all overseas and in Asia. But when I make them in India, in Africa, by artisans, the product never comes back as good. It always has difficulties in fit and colors and prints and not giving up on that, and the idea of creating jobs for people that just don't have the opportunity to work. It's quite difficult, but at the same time, so where I focus is third world, and I'm happy to have met you, where she was explaining some of the programs she works on in Los Angeles that I was unaware of because I'm so hyper-focused on third world. But the idea that me getting a letter from a woman that said, because of you, my husband no longer beats me because I am the breadwinner in my family. Well, I mean, how is, you know, how is your day-to-day problems that arise running a business, how does that even compare? And that's what actually compels me. So I just incorporated it into my business, and I highly recommend, if you have partners, to just write it into your contract, because it's not a fun subject, because it's a really hard way to make money, and yet it's a really easy way to bring so much joy into your life.
Thank you so much. Claudia, you have built a brand that offers products and services inside of corporations. What are some of the challenges that you face to really get corporations to take this work of diversity, inclusion, and equity really serious?
Well, and actually, thank you so much. And I was going to also just point out too, in doing the work with corporations, is that, and when you asked earlier, like, you know, how do we change industries, right? Is to really think about in all the consulting work and working with different leaders and cultures inside, a massive financial company to an alcohol spirits company to an electronics company, right? There's no one size diversity strategy fits all. Yeah. And to really, I think what we need to do is, really step back and, wherever you are in the organization is to really look inside and be like, what is unique to my culture? Like, an electronics company is going to be super different than a financial services company. And you have different, like maybe one type of company has more engineers. It has maybe more, men at the top, but like women at the bottom. You look at Condé Nast, the magazine, the fashion beauty companies, right? Loads of women, in the lower middle ranks, but all men at the top. And so the idea is to really reflect on, what is the heritage of our culture? What are our systematic problems? And to not necessarily look at every company and be like, oh, we need to do what they're doing, but like really, like you have to customize and really think what, any kind of personal growth, right? Like we got to look at, see what are our true problems, and then what do we need to do to fix those problems? And then from there, develop, okay, this is what we need to do in culture. We need to really focus on unconscious bias, or we really need to focus on mentorship because that's something that we lack. But then also from a CSR standpoint, once you figure out, okay, this is our strategy internally around women, diversity, people, humans, then from a CSR standpoint, I love what Rachel was saying, is that, for her type of business, like that's a value chain strategy, right? Like these are the people that are making her products. And so she's also taking that mission and embedding it into her value and supply chain. And so the point is that, we're going to innovate. Companies and corporations are going to innovate if they start from a place of really looking inward and really customizing and designing solutions that fix their needs and their biggest challenges. So I think it just starts there, and then making sure that those strategies start with, okay, we're doing this in our culture with our employees. We're doing this in our supply value chain. We're going to start doing this in our advertising and marketing. We're going to start doing this with our clients and partners, and really, really building it from that level up.
Well, supply chain it's a really interesting thing that you bring up, because we talk about supply chain a lot. We all, no matter what business we are, right, we're all outsourcing. And what exactly does that supply chain look like, and where are you getting it from? And I start that with my kids, because I feel like my kids think that you call Amazon and in 1 hour or less, food gets delivered to your house, right? And that's the culture we live in. So I talk to my children a lot about, well, who grows the food? Who then harvests the food? What truck driver transports the food? Then what process? And you have to start at a young age. And I know for us at Food Stores, we take supply chain very, very seriously. And we will go and visit each of the sites. So when it came to chocolate, for instance, right? All the best chocolate comes from South America. It comes within a distance from the equator. So we went a step farther than fair trade, and we wanted to go to SPP, which is sort of like that next level. It's 5 days a week. It's better healthcare. So we went and met with the factory, got on a flight, went to Peru, but we said, we want to see the farmers. We want to talk to them directly. We want to know what you're doing to give back to these farmers. And then we found out that they work in the jungles. They have no electricity. They need the light bulbs, the solar light bulbs. Great. Well, we work with big distributors like Target. Let us go back and have a conversation and figure out how, and it goes back to what you say, making it sort of the DNA of your company, to always think those extra steps through of what are all those other people that are helping you in your business, because those are the layers.
Yeah, I would say like companies are like micro societies. They're just bodies of people, and they need renovation and they need strategies unique to their society. And every level. And I think the value chain thing is something that we often forget. We often think about diversity and like impacting change only from an employee level, but it starts at every single aspect of who you touch.
How have you all seen, because what we're really kind of hinting at is like cultural change inside of an organization at every level. And you're doing work around food, and you talked upstairs about how you really had to look at the way that young kids, how they live when they're at school, when they're outside of school. So tell us how you had to innovate when it came to making sure that the work that you're doing around food is all encompassing for what the challenges that young people are facing.
Right now we are solely focused, our company, Food Stores, is an American brand. We only sell in America. So we're starting here with how we produce the food and what are the highest levels of food that we can provide. We really want to be the most sustainable. So we looked into organic sugar, right, which seems like the obvious, because obviously when you're baking, you need sugar. We found out that there's a farming process called biodynamic. And what biodynamic, it's one of the oldest farming systems. It's been around forever, but it gives back to the soil so that the soil can regrow without having to use chemicals or any of that stuff to give back. So we were going to get biodynamic sugar. Recently, I don't know if you've heard in the news, we've been talking a lot about glyphosates, which is, you've probably heard about Monsanto and the weed killer and that huge judgment. Well, it turns out glyphosates are in all food they were finding. They were finding it in our cereals and our oats. So we figured out how to get it out by producing and farming our own food, and we are now the first nationally organic brand to be certified glyphosate-free. So for us, it's about teaching what should be in the food, right? And I realize that is a high-class problem, right? If we have making it at an affordable price. When you look at third world countries, that's not something you can do. So what can you do to help them provide better food? Because when it comes down to it, food is how our brain develops, it's how our brain grows. So if in any society you can feed the children better, then the children are going to learn better in school. They're going to have less issues, and those are the people that are going to be running our world tomorrow. So I try to look at food as, you know, just one of the tools that you need for our bodies. And I think sometimes we're busy, we overlook food, we think about what's fast, but it's not necessarily what's best for us or what's best for our earth.
Wonderful. Rachel, as you think about how you've taken your brand and really innovated and been really thoughtful and creative, can you walk us through the impact that your philanthropic efforts are having in third world countries?
That's a great question. Well, you know, it's never enough, to be honest with you. And what motivates me more than anything are not business plans or how I grow my own company, but how can I grow my company so that I have a bigger voice and so that I can impact my programs like Kindness is Always Fashionable, which is basically making product with artisans instead of making them with a regular factory. So how much is it impacting? Not nearly enough. Not even close. But I also try not to overthink it. And I try to simplify everything in my life, from simple things like my closet and my house to keep it nice and clean so I can easy in, easy out, and make decisions quickly. But also in give back, I try to really keep it simple. And I'm not good at a lot of things, but there's something I'm really good at, and I happen to be working in that field, and I can give back in it, and everybody can. And so when I do personal appearances, particularly with young children, I ask them in the audience what it is that they do, and I give them suggestions on what they can do to give back. If they work at a library, they can read to kids that don't speak English. If they work at a pizza shop, they can ask their boss if they can give food away. All of these things are so helpful, but it's also empowering to know that just in what you do, whatever field it is, you can help. And for me, helping one person really does make a difference.
It's leading by example.
Yeah. Claudia, you have built She Summit, which you're turning now into She Global. Can you really walk us through how you are partnering with organizations to shift culture, and what does it look like when you're having these conversations with organizations, and what do they need to know about the impact that She Summit, She Global is having?
By the way, I love you because Wade's always giving me, he's like, Claudia, you need to talk more about what you're doing.
I want to tee you up right?
Making sure that I am actually explaining the hard work that we slave over year round. Thank you. Yeah, so, you know, it's interesting, and I talked about it a little bit this morning with my opening, is that, you know, because She Summit relied on corporate sponsorships all these years and getting companies to buy tickets, and you know, we really just started, they're like, oh, don't talk to marketing, talk to our head of D&I, talk to our HR, talk to talent acquisition, talk to the person running our women's network. And so it just sort of sent us on this journey over the years, and just really listening and having hundreds of conversations with all kinds of companies. And I mean, 150 companies are here alone in these 2 days. And so we just realized that that's so much of what these companies need is, you know, content and like the conversations that we're having here at She Summit. and being able to bring those into the organization. So we've launched She Global to really help unlock talent to transform culture and the workplace. I think in order to do that, first, it's like really speaking to employees. Like traditionally, changing culture has always been a top-down strategy. Okay, well, the person that's running, this department is in charge of that, or HR is in charge of that, or if you have, unlucky enough to have a diversity person, maybe they're in charge of a part of that. And so, but I believe that, we really now, the big change is, no, it's like every employee, every person at the organization can actually affect change, and we actually need to give those tools to those people to then bring into the organization. So She University is something that we've launched, and so you could take She Summit sessions on courageous conversations on inclusion or innovating around women and girls, and take that into your company, do that leadership training on your own. So you've got the videos online throughout the year, but then you can also grab your team members and actually listen to the session again and actually give you facilitation guides and homework to do so you can actually customize that conversation in your organization. I think that's having the content, but the other thing is having the courage and the actual commitment to putting the energy into it, because everybody's so busy, right? Everybody's doing their job, going home to their families. People are so busy, and so all this work to change culture is volunteer work often. And so it's like, how do you actually motivate? How each of us are inspired to do good, right? Like, how do you motivate? And that extra 5 hours you need to put in every week, or that extra, the pulling together of these events and the programming, it's all extra hours and extra work. So you got to really inspire people to want to do that work. So a lot of leadership development trainings, lots of workshops. But She University, we also, a culture app is another product that, because obviously teams also, I was talking to, Converse and how they're doing amazing stuff in Boston, but how do they duplicate that to all their regional offices? You can't clone it, right? Yeah. So it's like, how do you also then create tools so that they can spread and scale their best practices? So a variety of things.
Gotcha.
So that's really exciting.
I'm always going to tee all of you up to really share the amazing work that you're doing. I want to kind of pivot and talk about challenges, right? So all of you have had to face some challenges, whether it's bias or stereotype. What are some ways that you have overcome some of those bias and stereotypes? And maybe can you even name what those kind of even look like? So the example is, I watched his name is Dave Rubenstein. He has a show on Bloomberg, and he interviews CEOs. And every time he interviews a woman, he always asks her, how does she juggle being a mother and being a business leader? I've never seen him ask a man that, right? So I'm just curious, so what are some things that you all can offer us that you had to overcome?
If I get that question, what is your work-life balance secret? It's like the tramp stamp of this new generation, right? It's like the question that and you know what the answer is? It's effing hard, right? And they don't ask men that question because it's not expected. And I always say to everyone, there's two keys. No matter what it is you're doing at that time, give 100%. When you're with your family, give 100%. When you're at work, it's okay to give 100%. When you need your time, give yourself 100%. We talk in our house a lot about failure. And I think there's this sort of bad connotation, this bad feeling around the word failure. So I want to eradicate that. We have to look at it as learning. Failure is just your first attempt in learning. You have to look at it like a muscle when you exercise, right? Yeah. You want your muscle to fail so it can regrow stronger. And I think when we take that scared word away from it, then we can grow and learn from our mistakes and move forward. I totally forgot the question he asked because I went on a tangent, which is usually sort of how my brain works. It just made me think of something important. But if you're talking about, I think that's the biggest thing, is how do we change the conversation so that the conversation is not expected, how do you balance work life? Or if you do, how do you do it?
Exactly.
Right? How do you do it?
Pivot and put it right back on them.
Pivot it right back. And I think we have to use that voice. And as much as I fear social media a lot, and there is an intrusion, and I worry that we're forgetting how to connect with people and make eye contact and all things, it's also such a great platform. You may think, I only have a small Instagram, right? I have 100 friends that follow me. Well, guess what? Those 100 friends have 100 friends, and they have 100 friends. And so you may feel that you're not doing enough, but that one letter from that one woman is enough to keep you going, that inspires everybody here to do it. And that's what the chain is, right? And that's how we move the conversation forward. So, because eventually isn't the goal we want to get to a place where we're not using she or him, it's just us. I always say, people always use the term girl boss around me, and I'm sorry, I really don't like that. I want the hashtag to be just boss.
Yes.
Right? I want to get to where we can get to that place, and if we can get to it here, then we can spread that. So I probably answered not one of your questions, but there you go.
So I'm going to dovetail that and go to you, Rachel, and to say, Michelle, she mentioned failure. How have you failed, but that has caused you to innovate, to really impact not just you, but women and girls around you?
You're good.
I'm decent on Thursdays.
Is that my question?
Yes.
Oh boy. I love what you said about boss, though. That's
right?
That's
it just makes me crazy.
That's fantastic. So how do I innovate from failure?
Yeah.
Oh, again, every single day I innovate from failure because you have to if you want to keep your company going. And I have a somewhat small company, and you can do that. It's the lovely thing about having a company on the smaller side is that you can make quick decisions and you can implement change, and that's lovely. Working with the UN, big organization that cannot make quick decisions and cannot implement change as quickly as I would like personally. And so anything from a fitting going wrong to a designer making a mistake that works for me, and it's a beautiful mistake. It was a much better idea. That's a small example to you have a division that you want to open and you're just not meeting any partners with shared values. So do you continue to work with partners that don't have shared values, or are you going to take a risk, lose some money, and wait for people that think like you? Every single day, you're faced with decisions that ultimately affect the quality of your life. And as we all know, quality of life is really the goal for all of us so that we can get stronger and help more people. And Deepak Chopra says, and told me that multitasking is not a good idea. He said, people that multitask are rarely...
I'm in trouble.
We're in a lot of trouble. I was like, okay.
You can multitask as long as you focus when you're on the task.
That's right, 100%.
But if you want to do
focus on that.
something well, you do one thing at a time, and you do it really well, and you're present, and you move on to the next with taking space and time for yourself in between. And so that's what I do.
How do you master the stuff in between time? I can master the one task at a time, and really, but it's the me time in between I think I've lost.
You have to schedule it like a meeting.
Got it.
So Claudia, as you think about your book and all of the beautiful wisdom in that, and as you think about the failures that you've had when it comes to getting a corporation to truly want transformative change and not transactional change, what are some of the learnings that you've had?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, back to the original question too, around what limits you. I think that, and I think that for so many of us, often what limits us is ourselves. Yeah. And especially as women, because we are literally, before we even go out there and do that change, it's like there's a battlefield in our minds, right? And I actually think in this time right now where, women are being expected to not only have that job, have the family, take care of manage the home as best as you can, but now you're also supposed to change the world. I actually feel like, we just keep on adding more and more and more to women's plates, and we're not taking things off. And then actually when you're on social media and you see, oh, well, this person's doing this, and she looks like she lost 10 pounds, and she's also changing the world. It's almost like the new skinny, right? Is like the new global change maker. And so the thing is that I think the internal, okay, well, what am I doing, right? And I think that we need to conquer our internal, the battlefields in our minds, before, that's something that women are that I know that I deal with, right? And then secondly, if I want to collaborate with a company, right, it's also, or I want to collaborate with anybody, or let's just say I'm at a company and my boss or my colleagues, they're also going to have biases, or they might have, perceptions of me, right? And so the thing is that my point is that we all have to get a lot better about being transparent and being open and being vulnerable and being bold and putting ourselves out there, and to actually just have that inner confidence because in a way we're not communicating, right? Like how are we ever gonna make progress together when like I can't even fully be courageous and brave and and really step into that power, and then at the same time that company that I want to partner with, or that person in that company, or that whoever, my boss or whoever it is also has might not know me, right? So we all have to just be super courageous and put ourselves out there. I think that that's like the number one thing that has to start happening, is those courageous conversations. Yeah, and I think all this whole change around I'm one person with a small team, and this has been bold. Launching She Summit was bold on my own. I don't have any venture capital. I have no backing. It's just me and like my savings and doing all these years. And it takes, and like just even the shift from consumer women's empowerment to now B2B corporate culture change, like it's bold and it's terrifying. But I know that when you see the invisible, you do the impossible. And so it's almost like, and I'm rooted in God. So that's the other thing too. It's like, you gotta be, in order to have that courage, you gotta be rooted in something so much bigger than yourself. And for me, it's like, if I don't make it about me and I make it about something bigger than, and that the impact that I can make, it's, it allows me to be bold and put myself out there, because I have to, every single day, the quotes, everything that we do, every topic we chose, you're putting yourself out there. And, so I think we just have to be courageous in that way.
I love that you said when you see the invisible,
I
you do
keep
the
saying that in
impossible.
my- I
Wow,
keep
man,
saying
I
that
was
in my
like,
head.
yes, that was really impactful. So we only have a little bit of time left. I want you all to be bold. And we have over 150 companies here. What is one thing that they can do that's bold, that's revolutionary, that's groundbreaking, that you all would say, if you all can do this, you will really impact the lives of women and girls, whether it's in the workplace or society? And I'll let whoever feels confident enough to go first to take that one.
We have a minute and 42 seconds.
You got more time than that.
Give me 10
You got
hours.
more time than that.
Look, first of all, is we have to change the perception. Women have to work together better with each other. I think that's the first thing. For so long, women have been pitted against women. I know that from my days in television, where they want to, pit the star of this show against the star of that show, to corporate business. I know that when we went out for funding for our Series A and for our early seed round, we thought, okay, great, we're going to go to these women-run VCs. Guess what? No women invested in us. So we now had to go pitch to these men who maybe don't necessarily relate to our product. And so we have to really find to shape that conversation so that we can shape the bigger conversation within companies. But I think the biggest change that anybody can make is we have to stop thinking about, well, I'm just one person, what can I do? And once you get around that mentality, like, oh wait, I'm one person, I can do a lot. And if I do a lot, then you next to me do a lot, and you next to, that's the biggest bold, courageous move you can make, and it starts small so it's not so daunting, and then it webs out. I mean, I would say, so that's the biggest thing, and just to have open conversation. Like, we're so afraid of conflict now, and we text people, and we don't have these conversations face to face. And I always say, when someone says something, you listen, take a breath, don't have your response ready, hear what they're saying, because maybe what they're saying is not what you want to hear, but maybe there's a way to connect differently. And I just think, because we're juggling a million things, and I think that's really the heart of what you were saying, is just stop for a second, listen, and let's move forward.
Thank you so much.
That answers your question at all.
No, that does, definitely. Who wants to go next?
Well, I would say that you absolutely cannot grow your company unless you're willing to take risk, and unless you're willing for people to not like you, and to be okay with both of those. And internally within a business, I find that when I promote from within, especially female, and by the way, I have about 55 employees, and 2 of them are male. And when I promote, I do not ask them where they went to college. Many of them did not go to college. And what I do is I look at their work ethic and their work history. What time do they come? What time do they leave? And what is their attitude while they are while they're at work? And those are the young girls that I like to promote. And I also believe that I have an 18-year-old daughter, and she is not interested in businesses or buying from businesses that don't have purpose. And so I really think that your passion and your purpose can make a profit. And I definitely believe in businesses that give back and that make a profit. And I think those three go hand in hand quite nicely.
Thank you, Rachel. Claudia?
And I would just say that, back to and we have a commitment wall outside, which is really, a bold thing that each and every one of you can do is commit to doing something, if it's in your workplace or in your community, in your family, wherever it is, but let's just use workplace for an example, because that's the theme of these 2 days, and back to see the invisible, do the impossible, is if you see a problem or you see that something is clearly not right or something that clearly doesn't align with what the organization's values are, or you're witnessing something, is commit to changing that. And and build a little tribe around it, right? Like, who's the first person you need to influence, and the second person, and bring outside people or partners, but just be bold. That's a bold move, but that's the first step to rising as a change agent in your organization. I actually, when we, back to reimagining what the future of workplace looks like, because I talked about that this morning, is that so that equality is actually possible. Like, in the current system right now, equality is not possible. It is not possible. And so we have to redesign the system. So can we reimagine, every company teaching about fertility, in their 20s, like once they enter the work market, so that, women struggling with getting pregnant and miscarriages that are so, prevalent, and why we're talking about it tomorrow, like, can we imagine importing a fertility education program into our workplace?
Yeah.
I actually think there's a whole barrier too with our partnerships at home. We need to synergize better with our partnerships at home for women, because that impacts our decisions at work. And so maybe companies offer marriage counseling at some point, right? I mean, it's really like, let's be wild and crazy and think about the new paradigm of, this program. If we want to retain and then we need to have these programs. And so that's being bold, right? Like, no matter how crazy the idea is, you never know. The bigger you vision, the bigger steps you take.
Well, thank you, three. Let's give a big round of applause for our business leaders. Thank you all again so much for your time.